Guzworks, and another edition of KSP Lessons. The lesson today is going to be on delta V. Very important concept in Kerbal Space Program. Delta V stands for change in velocity, and it's important because the amount that your craft can change its velocity is determining how far it can go. So we're going to go over that, a little bit of the math that will help you out, and combining that with trial and error to make KSP a little more fun and save you more time. Nobody likes to create a ship, a mission vessel, get it out into space, get it toward their object, and just run out of fuel. That's one of the worst feelings you can have. You spend a couple hours doing something really annoying, complex, and you have a lot of fun up until the point your mission failed. Even if you quick save in the middle of it, it's not going to add fuel, it's not going to save you if you just didn't have enough in the first place. So hopefully this is going to save you some headache and help you complete some missions. So to start, we're going to make a quick payload. The first thing you want to do in considering your things is make your payload. Make your mission vehicle. That's going to help you determine how much delta V, what your mission is going to help you determine how much delta V you need. What's going to help you get that amount of delta V and how much to build your rocket up, how big of a rocket to make, is going to depend on what you're going to be using when you get to space. So first, focus on getting your mission vehicle finished. In this case, we're building a simple satellite. It's going to have capabilities to move around using xenon gas and an ion thruster, and those big old solar sails to get it going. I've already checked the mass on this previously. It's going to be about 1.18 tons. So for later reference, when we add it all together, I already know. But the way you can check that is on the map, and we'll go over that in a second. It's a little easier than actually sitting here and counting all the parts. Alright, next, we're going to want to build the stage that's going to finish getting it into orbit. It's pretty much building backwards from mission time. This is the thing that will be working in space, the satellite. This next portion will be the portion that will be circularizing its orbit around Kerbin, because that's all I'm anticipating doing with this is getting in an orbit around Kerbin. So let's see, get some fuel, and we need that much? I don't know. Probably not. We probably won't need much more than that. Here, and yeah, a lot of KSP is meant to just be fun, trial and error, and for some people it's all trial and error. Math? What's math? I don't do that, and I could see where some people wouldn't enjoy doing it. But sometimes it's nice. It's nice to do a little math and just take care of that, because it's going to save you some time. You have to try over and over, and trial and error in KSP is fantastic. It just turns out sometimes you get tired of it when your mission has failed over and over and over again. And maybe it's just me, maybe I'm just not good, but I like to fail as little as possible. Out here on the launch pad, we're going to check what the mass of this vehicle is. And what that's going to do is give us the delta V of this stage. Alright, my orbiting stage. What's going to get me there? The mass of this one is 7.54 tons. Alright, so we note that down. And then we're going to do a little bit of math. Alright, after doing the math, the delta V comes out to 2,744 meters per second. Is it a precise number? No. Pilot error and how I ascend and everything will make that vary. I could waste delta V on certain things, and I won't get to where I think I'm going to get with it. But 2744, pretty good to work with. A lot of times I round down to tell myself, hey, you really don't have that much because you're probably not that good of a pilot. But how did I get this number, 2,744 meters per second? I came to this number by this equation. Delta V equals the ISP of the engine you're using in seconds, and that's generally how Kerbal Space Program posts it, times 9.81 times the natural log of the ship's total mass divided by the ship's dry mass. That sounds kind of complicated for folks who aren't very far into algebra, or far past algebra 2, or who have done those things and go, I wasn't really good with those. I don't want to do all this. Well, okay, if you don't want to do it, fine. Go launch your rockets, shoot them off Kerbin, see how far they get. And that's fun too. But honestly, you don't really need to even know a lot about it. All you need is a handy-dandy calculator that has the ln, the natural log function, on it. That's pretty much it. Everything is rather provided for you. You check your mass on this screen. Total mass, 7.54. How do I get the dry mass, you say? Well, the dry mass is achieved by discovering how much mass your rocket will have when it is out of fuel. It's the dry mass. And you determine that by determining how many tons of fuel your fuel tanks have. This fuel tank has 4 tons of fuel. So the dry mass is going to be that total mass, 7.54 minus 4 tons of fuel, to equal 3.54 tons of fuel. So you divide that total, 7.54, by 3.54 dry, aka without fuel, the fuel that's expended to get to where it's going. You take the natural log of that number, you multiply it by 9.81, you multiply that by the engine's ISP in seconds, what Kerbal Space Program already gives you as its ISP. You want to take a look at what sort of atmosphere you're going to be in, but I anticipate using this as an orbiter, I'll already be in space when I'm using it. If not, you can kind of take an average between atmosphere and space and use that. The average ISP of this would have been about 350, so I mean I could work with that too, and it bring the delta V down. And that's it. Follow that equation, do a couple little things on there, and you'll be good. All right, back in the VAB. Let me quickly go over how to pick your engines. So, I chose this engine. That's the LVT30 liquid fuel engine. Why did I choose this engine? Well, a couple different things. First off, when I saw that the mass I was just trying something out, for starters. I just threw something on, I figured, yep, that engine's going to do it, and I know it has a decent ISP. But after I threw it on, I checked the mass on this. The mass is 7.54 tons, and if you saw my first video about thrust to weight ratio, you do some quick math, you'll realize this engine's just fine for actually, lifting this orbiter and keeping it going. And it's a thrust to weight ratio way higher than it needs to be, so that's great. That's fine. I probably won't even need to use as much fuel on it as I need. At full thrust, I could probably thrust it down a little and save some fuel. Thrust to weight ratio in this case would be 215 divided by 7.54 and 7.54 times 9.81, and that number would be thrust to weight ratio. I already know that's going to be above 2. I'm great. How else did I come to this conclusion? And why would I choose this engine? Why would I stay with this engine after I just kind of guessed and looked at the numbers? ISP. The ISP of this engine in vacuum is 370. And that's pretty good. It's really high for a lot of the engines. It's also got, pretty much between the thrust of the engine and the ISP are the two things that I chose it for. I could go with its sister engine, the LVT45 liquid engine. It has pretty much the same stats, except that the thrust is a little lower, but it also has a vectoring range. It's a vectored engine. It can help you steer, and in fact, thinking about that, and knowing that I have a pro body on here, I'm actually going to change that. I also corrected a little issue with my design. For some reason I put a decoupler here the first time. For those of you who spotted it, don't ask. I'm actually having had a lot of sleep, so if I'm doing some stupid things, hey, give me a little forgiveness. Alright, so we have this, and actually it's probably going to weigh a little more, 0.25 more, but that shouldn't affect this too much. So now we want to build our next stage. Again, you're building this in stages, and you're determining what those stages are based upon mission element and giving it enough delta V to do what it's going to do. Next stage, pretty much getting your mission element where it's going to go, and the rocket to get that where that's going to go, and the rocket to get that to where it's going to go, all the way down to the rocket that's going to get this thing off Kerbin in an orbit or ejecting it to wherever. Okay, so next portion. Let's build the next stage. between each stage, decouplers. That's a little too big, so to connect that, we're going to use the Bronco Max brand adapter XL, I believe it's called. Adapter 02, excuse me. Add some more fuel, and at this point, what am I doing? I'm guessing. But it's important to keep track of how much fuel you're adding in this one, and this is where you can see where I'm getting those numbers about the fuel from. You look at its total mass. This fuel tank's total mass is 4.5, and its dry mass is 0.5. What's that mean? Well, that means when it has fuel, it's 4.5. When it's empty, it's 0.5. The difference between those, aka subtracting total mass by dry mass, gets you 4 tons of fuel. 4.5 minus 0.5. Make the connection? Excellent. 4 tons of fuel in this one. And that's what I need to know over this stage, 4. And then how much does this one have? Well, let's check. 36 minus the dry mass of 4, 32. Alright, so 32 tons of fuel plus 4 tons of fuel. Well, what's that going to be? 36 tons of fuel. Fantastic. So if we know for this stage, if this is what we're doing, we have 36 tons of fuel, and that's the math we're going to be working with. The skipper engine is the one I'm going to try to use. I'm going to do a quick check on the math in a second. I want to try to use this one because I think it has enough power without testing it. But also its ISP is good. It's better than that of the Bronco Max mainsail. Mainsail is an ISP of 280 at sea level, and that's where I intend to use this. The skipper engine has a ISP of 300 at sea level. And if you look at the equation, if you multiply a higher ISP by all those other numbers, it's going to make your delta V higher. So you want higher ISP if you can afford it. So let's check it out. Let's go to, let's put a couple more things on here. It's not a video about how to actually design your rockets, so I'm not going to go into some of that. But I will do a video on that as well. Rocket design, stability, etc. Let's look at this and see if that's enough. So here we are on the launch pad, and let's take a look. Mass, 52.93 tons, with an astounding 24-part count. 52.93 tons. So, doing the math, we come out with approximately 3,300 delta V. Great! 3,300 delta V. If you remember from before, I said it takes about 4,500 to get off Kerbin, or maybe 4,700 to get off Kerbin, get in orbit between 70 and 100 kilometers. So, 3,300, pretty much at this point you would add your stage delta V's together. My first stage is 3,300, my second stage has 2,700. If you add those together, you're getting, I think that's 6,000, roughly 6,000 delta V. Fantastic. That's plenty to get off Kerbin and adjust orbits, change orbits, all I need. Wonderful. Problem. This engine, while the thruster-weight ratio is above 1, and it will lift off the ground, it'll be inefficient. And while I think this may even get into orbit anyway, we could be more efficient. And, because it's close to 1, the thruster-weight ratio is about 1.25, I think we could do better with the next biggest engine, or a combination of other engines. You can do either one, whichever one you want to do. Either the mainsail would be an option at this point because it has more, or you could also use a combination of the T30 or the LVT45, and those would be fine because their ISPs are great, but if you use about 4 of them and a quad coupler system on the bottom, great ISPs, and you might have enough thrust to weight ratio to get off the ground. So let's go back to the VAB real quick. I'm going to change it out, and then we'll meet on the launch pad here at the new numbers. Alright, and on the launch pad with the different engine, I deliberated a little bit, did a little more math, and decided, you know what, this is going to be a better engine. Why is this a better engine to go with? Well, for the same, or roughly the same mass and design issues, actually saving us a lot of design issues, other engine combinations really weren't going to do it. I could have done some solid rocket boosters on the sides that decouple to help the skipper up and have the skipper going as well during that to expend some fuel, make it lighter for when the skipper runs on its own. But I decided you know what, easy design, easy, and I think it's going to be enough. Let's just put a mainsail on there. Advantages of the mainsail as an initial lift stage are that it's big. It puts out a lot. This configuration is going to have a thrust-to-weight ratio of 2.78-ish. That's pretty darn good. You only need 2 to 2.2 to really be optimal. 2.7 sounds great. We can throttle down a little bit to get what we want out of it, especially as we lose fuel. The thrust-to-weight ratio is going to go up. So it's going to be a pretty good process. The delta V for this stage has gone down. Why? Well, two reasons. First off, this engine is not as efficient. This engine is 280 ISP versus 300. The lower the ISP, the less efficient, the less delta V you're going to get. Also, this engine weighs 2 tons more than the other. So we're also not going to have, we're going to have more mass to push up, meaning we're going to have to expend more fuel to do so. All in all, we only lose 400 or so delta V. I mean, it's a decent bit, but it's not so much that we're going to be concerned. I think this rocket will get to orbit. What do you think? Should we try it out? I think we're going to try it out. Make sure our staging's good. I think we're fine. And let's get going. Alright, off. Now, delta V wise, there's ways to save fuel as you go into orbit. One of those ways is to make sure you're throttled down enough. And what I mean by that is you don't need to be going certain speeds at certain levels in the atmosphere. At certain points, you're just fighting drag. I'm probably actually doing it now and exceeding what I need to, but I think we're going to be okay anyway. So, yeah, pretty much if you're pushing too hard, you're wasting fuel because, you can go faster, you can beat the drag, but you don't need to. If you just go along and stay under what the drag forces are regarding it, you should save some fuel and still have enough to get up. Pretty much the idea is that you only need enough thrust to get up. Going up faster doesn't necessarily save you fuel. If you go too fast, you're wasting fuel beating drag. If you go too slow, you are you're letting gravity take away your fuel. That's not good. Now, once you start to hit 15, 16,000, and you start beating 400 or so meters per second, throttle up. Because at this point, until you reach about 30,000, you can go anywhere up to, 1,400 or so meters per second. And I'll post a link to something that can help you determine these things and pay attention to it. Now, I know we should be reaching very quickly out of Kerbin. In fact, bam, look at that. Apple Apps is way up. That's the thing about the mainsail. You really got to watch it. I'm not trying to teach orbits here. I'm just trying to show you about delta V. Now, look. We have this much fuel left. Yeah, I think that's going to get us the rest of the way. Pretty much what's going to happen is we're going to expend what's left in this tank. We're going to eject it, and then we're going to be running on this fuel. This stage alone, if you remember, has about 2,700 delta V. Fantastic, right? That should be plenty. That should get us where we want to go. Was it the most efficient way into orbit? No, I was trying to teach some techniques at the same time, and that was kind of hard, but sorry about that. We'll do another video on orbits, getting into space, and all that fun jazz. I can't pay attention to so many things at once, so, again, apologize, not the best orbit. One way we can check and see if we got enough delta V at this point is to make a maneuver node. You want to do it in Apple Apps. It's the most efficient place to burn. And voila, let's check it out. Alright. Now, the bare minimum to make orbit, a stable orbit, is that we need to have no side less than 70,000. The bare minimum is 70,000. 70 kilometers, 70,000 meters. 80, whatever. Good enough. Alright. How much delta V is that going to take? 1,680.9 meters per second delta V. Well, we know we have that, especially with the combination of these two. So what we're going to do, we're going to adjust, speed up time a little. And come down, we have 5 seconds to burn. I'm going to just adjust a little more. And voila, let's go. And we're out. Next stage. Boosting forward, alright. And we can watch the delta V go down. Now, you don't have to do a maneuver node for this, especially when you get to orbiting a lot more. That's going to be unnecessary. But you can even look how this burns a lot slower than our mainsail. It's a lot more efficient of an engine because it's not shooting out as much power and the ISP is higher. And once you're in orbit, you're just not going to need as much. Plus, this is a smaller stage. We're not going to need as much. So again, for the bare minimum, this is what we need. We can go higher than the bare minimum. I don't know, I'll show you that. I know we'll make it. We're already almost getting there. Oxidizer, yeah, look at this, plenty. We got this coming up here. And voila, easily in orbit. This was even wrong. We had plenty. We had so much. And we still have plenty. I can start going other places if I wanted. But what this affords me is the ability to change my correction, change my orbit, correct it, things like that. Simple, right? And that's the basics of, looking at Delta V, designing a craft around Delta V and things like that. I'm not going for a mission. I don't care how sloppy this is. I just wanted to show you. So bam, success. Maybe this is where we wanted in the first place. Let's get these going. So we make sure we have power. And voila. Look at that. Satellite in orbit. Now, I didn't put any communication stuff on it. I didn't really put anything other than that one battery, but that should be plenty. And yeah, we're good to go. And one thing I didn't do is I didn't calculate the ISP of this guy. I'm sorry, the ISP. The delta V of this guy. But we easily could. And you know what? That's what I'm going to leave as your challenge. Go ahead, post the... well, don't comment on it. I want you to give away the answer, but... if you want to figure out the delta V of this craft, go back, take a look at how much it was. I believe it was about 1.18 tons. It's got a xenon gas container and an ion thruster. Go figure out the delta V. Send me an inbox with what you think their answer is. I'll let you know if you're right. Post a comment that you're right. Whatever you like. I hope the video's been helpful. And if you liked it or if it was helpful, subscribe, like, favorite. I would really appreciate it. I'd like to get it out to more people, and I can't do that unless you really like the video. Thanks very much for watching, and this has been KSP Lessons on Guzworks channel.